worth highlighting kind of out of the way. The biggest subjective narrative going into this game is JT Daniels, our mustachioed hero. What the hell are we going to do with him? Will we finally see him play? Has he healed up enough? I know, Graham, you have done plenty of work on this, and I kind of want to hear your take on this situation. So what do we even see? Is it worth it? What's the deal?
Yeah, well, so I mean, I think we're in the midst of a COVID ad hoc season, kind of bootleg, and there's no reason to care about a game against a 1-6 or 7, whatever they are, Mississippi State team, except for the fact that, like, this game tomorrow, I think not tomorrow, on Saturday, if it happens, I kind of am looking at this game the same way that I would look at, like, a season opener, where it's like, okay, like, we're going to find out a lot about what Georgia football is and what, more importantly, it's going to be going forward over the next year and a half. Everyone in the fan base seems to kind of have given up a little bit on the current quarterback room, and I get it. It's been a frustrating year, but asking Brock Vandagriff to come in next season after playing single A private school ball in Georgia and saying, all right, we're going to throw this kid out there to start game 1 against Clemson in Charlotte, which I think, I mean, that's an important thing to remember, is like, we play Clemson, 4 games from now or 5 games from now on our schedule. So, yeah, Daniels was an extremely talented prospect. He's one of literally the highest rated quarterback recruits in the history of the recruiting industry. And he went to USC, and he played as a true freshman 17-year-old on a really bad team that would have been really, really a lot worse without him. And I think the thing that I want to talk about and look at a little bit is there's a lot of folks, I think, that have, like, already decided that JT Daniels is not the answer at quarterback, and he might not be. Like, we haven't seen him take a snap at Georgia yet, but going back and looking at the tape of what he did at Southern Cal, there's a lot of good things there, especially when you consider he was a true freshman. And I do have some numbers that I kind of want to, like, throw out just to add a little bit of perspective. And so Fromm, as a true freshman in 2017, threw for 174 yards per game, 62% completion percentage. Matt Stafford, he played a lot as a true freshman in 06. He threw for 134 yards per game and a 52.7 completion percentage. Aaron Murray's freshman year, 2009, which he started every game, 234 yards per game, 61% completion. And Daniels in 2018, 242 yards a game, 59.5 completion percentage. And Daniels was 17 years old. He was a year younger than all those guys. So the point being in all that is that, like, there's a huge leap that happens for these really talented quarterbacks that are talented enough to come in and start as freshmen at Power 5 schools between year 1 and year 2. There's a lot that gets learned. And Daniels only played a half of football in 2019, but he was 25 for 32 passing for 254 yards and a couple of touchdowns in a passing system that has a lot of the same principles that Todd Monken's offense does. So I'm excited to see what he can do, because I think, like, it would really raise the floor and the ceiling, for that matter, of what Georgia could be in 2021. Like, if he's a good quarterback, Georgia is a legitimate playoff team and national title contender next year. And if he's not, then we're probably another couple years away from being at that level again, because Vandagriff's not the numbers we just read. That's what you can expect from Vandagriff next year. He's not going to come in and throw 68% completion and set the world on fire with, like, 35 touchdowns and 7 picks.
He'd still be better than what Stetson Bennett did this year.
100%. Yeah, it would. And I mean, there's plenty of reason to be excited about him, but, like, if you want Georgia to be a viable contender next year, you need to be hoping that JT Daniels is the guy.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that there's some evidence, and we can, if we want to get into the film review here, there's some actual sort of schematic, and I mean, there are some one-to-one elements that we can look at in his time at USC that we think translate very well to UGA. And so I think.
And before
really
we get too deep
the,
into the film review, I will say just before we go there, if you're listening on the podcast, this is we'll kind of narrate what's going on in the video, just because I mean you'll be able to kind of pick up. It's kind of like a radio broadcast, but if you want to actually watch what we're about to be talking about, it's always going to be on the Chapel Bell Curve YouTube. You can find it in the show notes. You can also just find it by searching Chapel Bell Curve on YouTube. But I'll toss it back to you guys.
Nice.
So
do you want to roll in here, Nathan, or?
Yeah, sure. I really like. I want to talk about the first one, the USC Clip 7. Do you have that one pulled up there?
I do.
Justin?
I realize y'all probably can't see this, can you?
Do you have the stream for us?
Let me do that while we're sitting here live on all this.
Yeah. Now this is a really, really polished product that we're outputting right now.
I keep hitting my microphone today.
Okay.
But yeah, I will open that up real quick. And the way I had done it before was like this.
Oh, and we lost Graham.
He's gone forever. So I'll hop this in here real quick. Share this screen.
Sorry, I had to plug
CVC bot.
Yep. Okay.
CVC bot, your beautiful boy. That his video is not a watch stream. Boop. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so yeah, I've shared the screen with you, so you can be able to check this out. But yeah, I'll transition to this. So this is gonna be the first clip.
Let's roll this play. And this is something that that Graham pointed out in his notes. It's just sort of like a stereotypically good throw from a quarterback. Graham, you can kind of like dissect this a little bit more, but I mean the footwork keeps his feet moving. He doesn't stay still in the pocket. He delivers a very clean ball to an open receiver, but his arm slot, and if you want to you can talk to us more about what arm slot means. His delivery mechanics here are really good, and he has a clean pocket, but like ultimately, Stetson Bennett had a lot of clean pockets this year, right? And so like, what are you seeing here mechanically with this that really is like, so that really impresses you so much, Graham?
Yeah, so number one, I mean, there's good footwork there, and he kind of just calmly moves away from the rush. I think number two is the arm strength to be sort of moving and having his momentum rolling left and then throw back to the right across his body and hit a wide open, not wide, but I mean, hit an open receiver who is running away from him. That's not easy to do. Go out in your backyard and try to do that. It's really hard. But yeah, the arm angle and the slot that you were referring to, Nathan. So he kind of throws that ball like a little bit sidearmed. And a decade ago, and going back, like quarterback scouts that scout NFL prospects hated when guys would change the angle that they threw the ball from. Now it's seen as a really great asset in a quarterback because it allows him to maybe throw over a rushing defender or throw under a guy that's jumping up to try and block a pass. But like all those batted balls that we've seen this year from Stetson Bennett have been because Bennett lacks the instinctual ability to find those throwing lanes and alter his delivery to throw the ball into those open lanes in the line and in the defense. And Daniels does just that here on that play. The other thing that's really impressive, though, is it's a 3rd and 13. He's in his own end zone. He's a 17-year-old true freshman in one of the first few games of his career. And the rush is coming onto him. His primary wide receiver doesn't come open at first. And instead of like panicking and ducking and kind of just trying to run into the line and get the ball back to the line of scrimmage, he actually looks off the defender that's on his primary wide receiver and then comes back to his primary target when he gets open. And it's just, I mean, it's extremely calm and cool. And he's back there in the pocket for a long time. And he never panics. And I think we've seen this a lot this year with Bennett and Mathis. There's kind of that internal clock where they go 1, 2, 3, and somewhere between like 3 and 4, even if they're not about to get sacked, they just kind of start ducking and they don't keep their eyes downfield. And it's just sort of this mad dash and the play's dead at that point. So there's a lot to like in that one play.
And I will say schematically that is just a straight up 4 route. That's an in route, and I think that was from his slot. And that is the like slot in route. That's something we've seen a lot out of UGA. That is like that's not really a play concept. It's just a route and in a firm position, but it is something that we've seen a lot this year from UGA. That deep in route. You want to queue up the next one here? We want to look at clip 8. Yeah. It's just quick game, right? And this is something that we haven't really had a great feel for. And
right. No, and I think, we see on this play, like, it's just a quick read by the wide receiver and by Daniels that defensive back starts backpedaling right before the snap, and both of them know that, hey, we've got an easy 5-yard completion, sit down right there. But he delivers that ball to the back shoulder perfectly. Never puts it in the danger of the defensive back intercepting it. But the thing that I think a lot of people have forgotten over the course of this season is that, like, Jamie Newman was already on campus when Todd Monken showed up, and Todd Monken wanted to go out and get JT Daniels as a grad transfer, and I think a lot of that has to do with his ability to throw these quick passes and his experience in a read-based offense. For those of you that have been watching the Battle Hymnal and listening to Chapel Bell Curve throughout the season, you've heard Nathan and I talk about it a lot, but a lot of Todd Monken's offense is just reading what the defense is doing and having receivers either run to space or sit down when they find themselves in space. And Daniels has a ton of experience playing in that system. The air raid is based on just throwing the ball to the open grass and open spots. So I think that's missed a lot in Georgia's offense this year. Like, yeah, we haven't been able to complete downfield passes, but we also have not done a good job of completing little 5- and 6-yard out passes either. And that's kind of the foundation of any offense. Like, if you can't do that and stay ahead of schedule, in front of the chains, and as well stay in a place where you're creating more threats for the defense to have to defend, you're never really going to be successful as an offensive unit.
Yeah, and I mean schematically, like that little, curl, sit down, whatever you want to call it, like that is something that's been all over UGA's offense. And before weird schematic Twitter gets on me, I literally have the route chart pulled up right now. So everybody, calm down. But that has been, and I don't know if that's a side adjustment. To me, it looks like a side adjustment, and that's another thing that's really been missing from UGA's offense is just, quarterbacks and wide receivers being on the same pages on what these option routes should look like. And I think it's my sort of optimism about JT Daniels is not a star rating thing. It's not it's not his arm. It's just, I think he fits what we want to do. I think he knows how to throw in this system. And I think, and watch this pro transition. I think our next clip is sort of like a really good example of that. Let's look at clip 12 here.
Ooh, yeah. Like he just looks like what the modern SEC and modern college football is looking for, honestly.
Yeah.
Like just that quick off the hand, he puts it where it needs to be and doesn't think twice.
So on the one hand, I hate this play because go routes in the end zone don't work. And this one just happened to work, but that doesn't mean that they work. But on the other hand, and Graham has this on his notes, and Graham, I want you to go more into what you mean by this, but yeah, there's this concept, and it's a very popular concept in air raid football that like the deep pass is actually a touch pass. And this is a really good example of that. This is just like a beautifully thrown ball. It's over the head of the defender. It's right where it needs to be. It has a lot of touch. It's not overthrown. If anything, I really don't think that, arm strength has really been the problem in the Georgia quarterback room. If anything, DeJuan Mathis has a heater, right? That's the problem. He only throws one speed. And this is a good example of, especially in these air raid influence systems. The Mike Leach air raid, when they practice a lot of the time throwing to garbage cans on the field where their wide receiver is going to be, right? It's all about touch. It's all about placement. And this is a good example of a play where he's just putting the ball in the right place at the right angle at the right velocity. What are you seeing here?
No, 100% what you're saying. And I think that, like, the deep ball is a touch pass. And what I mean by that is that there has to be a certain angle on it, and you need that ball to drop in over the defender. And I mean, the Florida game was a perfect example of Dwan Mathis, and I think people think that Stetson Bennett has a weak arm, but if he had a weak arm, he wouldn't have overthrown so many receivers that he overthrew in the Florida game downfield. It's not about that. It's about the fact that when he throws a deep ball and when Dwan Mathis throws a deep ball that we've seen so far, it's a flat ball. And A, that makes it a lot easier for it to get picked off because it's not going to get over the defender's head. But B, it's a lot harder to be accurate on that pass because it's simple geometry, right? Like if you put something up higher in the air and you let it arc in, there's more time for the receiver to run under it, but there's also it's harder to defend. And I mean the play that we're looking at here where he's throwing it to his receiver and his receiver is running into the end zone, like he puts that ball literally on the outside shoulder of his wide receiver on the line on the edge of the end zone, basically like halfway between the two pylons. And there's no universe, there's nowhere where like you would rather put that ball. He puts that ball somewhere where like his guy has an opportunity to win and the other guy is out of the play. And if he throws that same ball flat, like Georgia's quarterbacks have been throwing it this year, that defensive back just has to turn around and jump up in the air and catch an easy interception. And so it's all about trajectory, right? I mean, it's, we could find someone to come in and talk about like launch angles and stuff like that. We don't want to fall that far down the wormhole. But the point is just like he's a natural thrower. If you look at that clip when he steps back, like he takes the snap, he takes one step backwards and boom, like he's already into his throwing motion. He's throwing with his hips and with his torso much more than he's trying to like torque his arm. And it's just a smooth, soft, catchable ball.
Yeah. Do you want to look at one more here or a couple more? I think there's a few more. Yeah.
I think let's look at this next one for sure because the next two actually I think show a lot of really good stuff. So this is just an all-world throw. Stupid people on the internet will watch this throw and they'll be like, "He threw it behind him, man." He threw it there, A, because that's where the space was, but B, if you look at that, he drops that ball over two linebackers and in front of a defensive or a safety. But like he threw that ball kind of to the backside of his receiver because otherwise it's going to get intercepted by the linebacker coming underneath. The ability to like see that field vision, to see to have enough confidence in your arm and to have enough processing ability, I think is the way I want to describe it, because like it's so quick to find that, but like to see a passing window in there is, I mean, it's prodigal, right? Like it's not prodigal, but like it's extremely rare for someone of that age to see that many chess pieces on the board, right? Like with young quarterbacks of that age, and even with an older quarterback like a Stetson Bennett, a lot of times like they don't see the field, they see a little sliver of the field, and they see their wide receiver and maybe the guy that's covering them, and if we're lucky, they see one other defender in the play. JT Daniels sees the entire field when he catches the ball. And I think that has a lot to do with what he sees pre-snap as well. But, like, if you watch a lot of film on him, you can tell that there's certain pre-snap looks that he gets where he intentionally moves his head and moves a linebacker to one side or moves a safety to another side so that it's going to create a window 4 or 5 seconds down the road when his wide receiver is crossing, across the field. So it's a really high level of stuff that like even some NFL quarterbacks don't do well, honestly. I'm not saying he's like the second coming of Peyton Manning or Joe Montana, but that's the type of thing that coaches are going to talk about and all that. But like, you're kind of born with that. Like by the time you get to college, if you have that, then you have that. And if you don't, then you're going to get better and you can get better. But, like, there's no way to really teach someone to see in that broad of a spectrum. And I think with, like, Stetson Bennett, DeJuan Mathis, it reminds me of that version of Madden where, like, it had the throwing cone in front of the quarterback. I don't know if you guys remember that, but like, if you didn't throw at the receiver, like right when he was in the cone, then it was always going to be an incomplete pass. And the bad quarterbacks, their cone was like this big, you know? And right now, that's what Georgia's been working with. And all of a sudden, you've got a quarterback that opens up the entire field.
Yeah, I think, and this is not, I have no sort of like, this is not an objective take. This is more of a subjective take. But when I watch this film, I see something that I haven't seen from a Georgia quarterback since probably Murray, which is just feel. He just has a feel for, and like you're saying with the cone of vision, like that combination of accuracy, timing, instinct, ability to move in the pocket. You know, Jake Fromm had it when he was really rolling, but I don't think we've really seen a quarterback do it on a down basis since Murray. And it's just the ability to just like be a second or two ahead of the play, or even a millisecond or two ahead of the play. And there's no, and I'm not saying he's never going to take a sack or he's never going to throw a pick. I mean, this guy grew up in an air raid system in Las Vegas. He's going to throw some picks. There ain't no doubt about that. But, but he also is going to score a lot if he could get to that level. And I think reading the tea leaves, the reason he hasn't started till this point is because he just wasn't that good. And I think, you know, that is probably has a lot to do with recovering from an injury, but that's a different thing from saying he was injured, right? Like, I don't know that he was necessarily injured. I just think when you're coming back from an injury, you're just not good on the way, like on your first day back. Like,
yeah. Well, and I also think that, like, when you have somebody that's that talented, the last thing that you want to do is break them. And a guy that hasn't played football in a year and had to have a second knee surgery because the first one didn't go wrong, like, that would be a huge mental hurdle for anybody, right? And so the last thing you want to do is put him in a situation where, like, he's not going to succeed. And I think he's in a situation now where he gets to go out against Mississippi State, who has a good defense, but, like, I don't think their offense is going to put a ton of pressure on Georgia to score. But the biggest thing is just he gets to go into this game, and George Pickens is going to be healthy. You're going to have a little bit more of a complete team around him. Like, I don't know what Milton or McIntosh's status is, but going out there with George Pickens versus not going out there with George Pickens is a big difference, right? So,
yeah,
just having that, like, chess piece on the board to kind of move things around and help open up other receivers should help him a lot.
Do you want to see this next play?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Cue it up.
This is a great touch pass.
Yeah, I mean,
excellent movement, and then just across the body, across the field. And the thing I really like about this play, I mean, it's not a traditional touch pass, but, like, it's thrown across the field with some loft, which is not what you normally teach someone to do in that situation. But he doesn't do the DeJuan Mathis thing, which is to be in trouble and just bullet it somewhere to get it out as quick as possible. Like, he throws a catchable ball on the run from a weird angle while being tackled. Like, that's, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's an NFL throw.
100%. And I know I mentioned it on the first throw we looked at, but, like, again, to me, the most impressive thing is just that the guy never panics. Like, he keeps his eyes downfield the entire time. You know, he steps up into the pocket, that collapses, he steps back out, and, like, he keeps the play alive. And those are winning plays. And, like, when you get to high-level football where Georgia wants to go, like, that's the type of play that Joe Burrow made on us in the SEC championship game last year, as I'm sure you guys remember, where, you know, it was where he rolled out right and threw that crazy, like, 70-yard bomb downfield, and it was the backbreaker. But most quarterbacks, that would have been a sack or an incomplete pass. like those type of plays swing games, especially games between good teams. So I'm not saying JT Daniels is going to come in on Saturday and he's going to be like the second coming, but there's really no question in my mind that, like, and this might be controversial to some folks, but I think he has more natural talent than we've seen from a Georgia starter. Like, I know I know Fields and Eason were on campus, and like Justin Fields is absolutely a specimen, but Justin Fields didn't show up on campus with this kind of throwing ability and this kind of pocket presence and vision. So it's like, I do honestly think that we haven't really seen somebody show up on campus like if he had come to Georgia as a true freshman, he would have showed up on campus as a more polished and more game ready true freshman than Fromm, Eason, Fields, and maybe even Stafford was. I mean, Stafford became something totally different. And I'm not saying he's going to be that, but I'm saying like all the tools are there for him to be an incredible quarterback. Like he could be as good of a quarterback as Georgia has had in a very, very long time, if ever, if the things that he possesses naturally are used correctly and focused in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, I mean, I know that's like a large statement, but watching that film, do you feel like you're watching a 17-year-old kid, or do you feel like you're watching like a senior or a junior who's about to be a high draft pick?
This definitely feels like that, yeah.
He was not, to be fair, as consistent as he was in the clips we're showing all the way through, because he was a freshman on a bad team, as we said. But if you take the best of a player their freshman year, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that their second year playing, they can get closer to being that more consistently.
Totally. Yeah, and I mean, you're right. Yeah, I don't want to color this inaccurately. Like, the guy threw, 11 interceptions his freshman year. But I think the ceiling with him is just extremely, extremely high. And as a freshman, he definitely made some mistakes and did what freshmen do. And there was times he threw into coverage. Like, there was times I think he trusted his arm too much, which we also saw from Stafford a lot in 06, where it was like, I'm a gunslinger. I know I have a big arm. I'm going to throw this ball into that window. And that window really didn't exist in college football the way that it did in high school football. But I think there's a lot to be excited about.
We got a few more plays here. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to hit you with them.
So what are you seeing?
So, I mean, I think this is, if we can run this back, sorry, I missed it a little bit, but to me, I think it's the reading ability, right? Like, he scans the field, he works through a few progressions, he finds that guy, and he sees them and he throws to him without hesitation. But if we watch this pass, like, he's going to throw it over a couple linebackers and in between the guy that's covering his wide receiver and another defender that's in zone for Arizona. Like, that ball is basically being dropped in between 3 or 4 guys, and it's being done without hesitation. So to me, it's just like, this is the type of plays that, like, we've talked a lot. Georgia's got open wide receivers, but truthfully, like, we haven't had anybody that really has the ability to make those kind of throws. Because, like, he's open. That's not an all-star, superstar throw. Like, that's a throw a good college quarterback should make. But it's still a very, very good play for a true freshman and for any quarterback for that matter. But with what Todd Monken has been doing, like, to have somebody that can make passes like that, Georgia's offense, like, could get pretty scary within a few games if he gets rolling.
What's most interesting about this play too is, like, this is, out of all the plays you've kind of brought to us today, like, this is the one where he sits in the pocket the longest, and you kind of get to see his whole thought progression. Like, he does look off a few receivers and chooses the one specifically. Like, it is a good throw and it's the right decision, it seems. He did have other players that were also open, and so you kind of get to see the whole he has that critical thinking that I think that we're definitely sort of missing. I think oftentimes we do have quarterbacks, especially right now, that overthink, and that's something that I kind of have seen when comparing like our quarterbacks to other quarterbacks that are competing at a higher level. But that's just kind of what I'm looking at here in this situation, I feel.
No, totally. I mean, I think like watching Kyle Trask right now, he sees a guy come open, he throws the ball. There is no hesitation, and it's that processing ability we're kind of talking about earlier, right? Of just like, I see it, I see him open, and in some cases, there's throws where he's throwing guys open, or he knows the route is going to come open when he clears a defender or cuts inside or outside, and that's high level quarterback play. And like you said, I mean, we just haven't had anyone that's really capable of like kind of seeing what's going to happen before it happens. It's okay, the guy's open. Oh wait, he's open. Okay, now I'm going to throw the ball, and then by that point, either the defender's closed or he's one of our quarterbacks, whether it's Ben or Mathis, has kind of like psyched himself out and tried to aim the ball. And we saw that with Jake Fromm a lot last year too, right? Like it was that I'm going to aim the ball into these tight windows kind of thing because he lost his confidence. And it's like, this dude just sees a guy come open and he lets it fly. And that's what you want.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to get these last couple plays?
Yeah, sure. Let's hit it.
Okay.
Take it, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, so his ability, I mean, okay, so two things. One, really, you're playing a better team here than Arizona. You're against Notre Dame. You're immediately feeling pressure in front of you. Just a slight movement, throws a slant accurately, doesn't overthrow it, doesn't throw too hard, hits the guy in stride. Like, that's not something that we've seen. I mean, and this is a slant that is open, certainly, but I mean, the guy has to make an adjustment back to the ball. So, he doesn't have a guy draped on him, but he's certainly not. I mean, he is covered. And this is one of those feel things where it's like he has the rush coming. He makes a slight adjustment. He throws an accurate ball and he takes the hit. I don't have the words really for why that's important for UGA's offense. Like, it's clear that UGA, that any college football program needs more than just competence, at the quarterback position, but you don't need much more than that. You need sort of like high average production, right? So this isn't like a shocking play. This isn't like, oh, he's Joe Burrow 2.0. This is just like a clean play with good feel out of a starting Division I quarterback, right? And like Georgia has not had what you would traditionally think of as a starting Division I quarterback this year. And, I would argue that in some respects, as good as Jake Fromm was in some ways, they didn't have one last year. And not that Jake Fromm wasn't a starter or that he wasn't good, but he didn't always have the quality of just looking composed, looking competent, throwing on time. And, does that make JT Daniels, Justin Fields? No. But I mean, I don't think Georgia needs Justin Fields to win a national championship, right? They need, probably more like someone a little better than Taj Boyd, but someone a little that could be a little worse than Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, yeah. You don't necessarily need Deshaun Watson, but you need someone who will get out there, look composed under pressure, and make throws to open dudes, right? I mean, how many times? And if you watch the Battle Hymnal, this has been a real theme on the Battle Hymnal this year. Is that like there are open guys all over the place all the time in this UGA offense?
Yeah, all the time, all over the place,
and just hitting open dudes in stride, feeling the rush, staying composed. That's what Georgia needs to win, and we haven't had it. And I think you can say what you want about JT Daniels as a prospect, but there's no doubt that there were times as a freshman on a bad team where he had that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, and I agree. It's not like Jake Fromm last year. He started seeing ghosts basically after the South Carolina game, and when guys weren't open very much, but when they were open, it was kind of those things where he was like, "Oh, okay, he's open, but am I sure he's open?" And it was just everything was a beat off, right? And like that throw with him, it's just like, boom, the rush is coming. this blitzer came from right there. That means there's going to be a hole in the defense right there. I'm going to throw into the blitz, which is exactly what almost every quarterback is taught to do. And it's just, he's not thinking, he's responding and reacting. And that's the most important thing.
So you got one more play.
Which might explain why he hasn't started, because he hasn't gotten there. So yeah, let's hit another one. Here, do this last one here, Graham.
Cool. So this to me, I think, just says a lot about his improvisational ability. That ball is supposed to go downfield on a long route, and it's covered. And so he doesn't throw it, but he just kind of, he feels the rush coming in, he steps up. And again, like he puts the ball where his guy can catch it. Yeah, maybe it's a little high, but like he puts the ball where 42, that Notre Dame linebacker, is not going to have a chance to catch it and take a pick six. It's not like it's not a hero play, right? It's not a 10-yard, or I'm sorry, it's not a 50-yard touchdown bomb, but it's a winning play. It's a first down that moves the chains. It is a positive play for a first down instead of a sack or a bad decision for an interception. It's a short gain instead of a panic and a thrown away ball that leads to 3rd and 7. Like, this is how offenses move and make their living and score touchdowns. It's not all about the highlight plays that we see on SportsCenter or on our Twitter feeds of like, oh, look at this explosive 80-yard play. It's more about the small things that move the chains, and I think that's where he might excel for Georgia.